we myself kind of introducing him. He'll take the questions on there, and then following.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to be taking you to a news conference in Boston here shortly, being held by the U.S. Coast Guard. Very interesting situation playing out in the North Atlantic. There is a company called Ocean Gate. They do expeditions to the Titanic. This is straight from their website. Where they advertise these expeditions for tourists. You can see the path is from Newfoundland down to the wreckage site. They take a submarine, a very high-tech submarine. That is it right there on your screen. It seats potentially 5 people. We are unclear if there were tourists on it for this venture, but that submarine is missing now. Again, on its latest venture to find the Titanic. You can see some of the video here that they have used in the past, shown in the past. This expedition is not cheap. If you are a tourist, the website advertises a 7-night cruise, and then you get on the submarine for about $250,000. Let's take you live now to Boston.
Commander of the 1st Coast Guard District, I'm prepared to give you a brief update on the case going on 900 miles east of Cape Cod during the search for 5 submariners. We do ask, following his brief statement, we'll be able to take a few questions and answers. We do ask that we give everybody the opportunity to ask one question, and if we have it to go through, we can be able to ask further questions beyond that. We only have time, let's say, for about 10 minutes. So he has a brief statement on here, and at this time I'd like to introduce Admiral John Mauger.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rear Admiral John Mauger. I'm the commander of the 1st Coast Guard District here in Boston, Massachusetts. And in this case, I am the lead for the Coast Guard search and rescue operations for the overdue submersible out near the wreck of the Titanic. Yesterday afternoon, we were notified by the operator of the submersible vessel that it was overdue, and it had 5 persons on board the submersible. So we're working very closely at this point to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to locate the submersible and rescue those on board. Our thoughts are with the crew members and the families of those on board the submersible at this time, and we are doing everything that we can do to make sure that we can locate and rescue those on board. So after receiving the call, we reached out to the vessel Polar Prince and began a surface search looking for the submersible. At the same time, we launched a C-130 aircraft to conduct an aerial search, both visual and radar, of the scene. We've subsequently coordinated with the Canadian Coast Guard and Canadian Armed Forces to deploy additional assets to the scene. The Canadians have had a C-130 aircraft searching as well, in addition to also having a P-8 submarine search aircraft deploy as well, and put sonar buoys in the water in attempt to listen. The location of the search is approximately 900 miles east of Cape Cod, in a water depth of roughly 13,000 feet. It is a remote area, and it is a challenge to conduct a search in that remote area, but we are deploying all available assets to make sure that we can locate the craft and rescue the people on board. Going into this evening, we will continue to fly aircraft and move additional vessels into the area. In this remote part of our search and rescue responsibility, oftentimes we rely on commercial operators to be the first vessels on scene. And so we've been in touch with additional commercial vessels that are operating in the area, as well as initiating the movement of additional Canadian Coast Guard assets and U.S. Coast Guard surface asset into the area over the course of the next couple of days. Adding to the complexity of this case is the fact that this was a submersible vessel, and so we need to make sure that we're looking both on the surface for the vessel if it had surfaced back to the water, but it somehow lost communications with the vessel, and that's what the aircraft and the surface search vessel is allowing us to do right now. But we're also having to search in the water column, and we're doing that right now with the use of sonar buoys and sonar on the ship that's out there to listen for any sounds that we can detect in the water column. Over the course of the next couple days, we anticipate adding additional capability to conduct additional search in the water as those commercial assets arrive on scene. Again, our thoughts are with the families and the crew members on board this submersible, and we're working very closely with all U.S. and international partners to provide any capability that we can provide to search for the overdue vessel and rescue the crew members on board. At this point, we'll take questions.
There were reports that the submarine may be trapped in the wreckage of the Titanic. Is this even possible? If that were the case, how much oxygen would these people on board have?
So in terms of locating the overdue submersible, we have to make sure that we're looking on both the surface using aerial and surface vessels, but then expanding into underwater search as well. Right now our capability is limited to sonar buoys and listening for sounds, but we're working very hard to increase the capability. We understand from the operator of the vessel that the vessel was designed with a 96-hour sustainment capability if there was an emergency on board. And so we're using that time, making the best use of every moment of that time to locate the vessel.
Sir, can you talk about who was on board exactly? And is there somebody named Hamish Harding, a British explorer? Can you confirm that he's on board? Some family has been posting up.
At this point, I'm not in a position to confirm the identity of anybody on board the vessel. Out of respect for the families, we're going through the notification process, and more updates will be forthcoming.
Sorry, I may be jumping something here, but it seems like if that vessel is indeed sitting on the bottom, and you have a 96-hour window to reach it, that this is a race to get some sort of rescue vehicle down to it. Am I correct about that?
That's absolutely part of the overall planning for this search case. Right now we're focused on locating the vessel, but at the same time, if we find this vessel in the water, then we will have to effect some sort of rescue or coordinating, reaching out to different partners within the U.S. Navy, within the Canadian Armed Forces, and within private industry to understand what underwater rescue capability might be available.
Are there any vessels on the way there that could do that if they could get down there?
So at this moment, we're focused on the search and understanding the capabilities of the vessels that are deploying to the scene.
And can your sonar measure as deep as 13,000 meters?
So the sonar capabilities within the sonar buoys and within the hull of the commercial vessel that is out there operating on site, those aren't Coast Guard sonars. They are capable of listening to a depth of 13,000 feet, as I understand it.
Elaborate on some of the numbers here. You mentioned that there were 96 hours of oxygen. How much of the 96 hours do you believe may be remaining if they are submerged? And also, what is the square mileage of your search right now?
So in terms of the square mileage of the search, I don't have that number right at this moment, but it includes both a surface area that we're looking at and a subsurface area. And so we'll get you the exact number for the square mileage of the search. In terms of the hours, we understood that that was 96 hours of rescue or emergency capability from the operator, and so we anticipate that there's somewhere between 70 to the full 96 hours available at this point.
Do you believe that the sub could be in a location near the Titanic, and if so, what are some of the challenges with sonar and a debris field that the Titanic had produced?
So it's certainly the purpose of the submarine was to, as I understand, the purpose of the submersible was to provide opportunity to visit the wreck site and explore the wreck site. So that's a possibility. Again, right now our focus is getting on as much capability into the area as we can and understanding that full capability of those assets that are being deployed. Our aerial assets that are being deployed have the capability to do both visual and radar searches, and the Canadians' asset had the ability to drop sonar buoys and listen, and so we're using all that information to improve our search capability.
And if it is a case that it's on the ocean field, what does that look like as far as retrieving it, safety challenges, etc.?
So we're working through that right now, but what we're really focused on at the moment is really locating the vessel, which could either be in the surface or subsurface. And so we're bringing in technical expertise to understand both the dynamics of underwater search and underwater rescue operations.
Hi there. So there'll be a lot of families watching this, and we'll be hoping that the loved ones will home. How hopeful are you?
So as search and rescue professionals, we work very, very hard, and our crews take this personally. Our first thoughts are with the crew members and the families of those on board. And so we want to make sure that we have done absolutely everything that we can do to locate their family members and bring them home safe. And so they're first and foremost in our thoughts every moment of this search operation.
Sir, how common are these threats to the Titanic in general, and how dangerous are they even without an emergency taking place?
I don't have any details on how often folks visit the wreck site there at Titanic, nor any specific comments on the dangers involved. Certainly, every time ships go to sea, they encounter hazards and dangers, and so having properly prepared vessels, properly prepared crew members, and making sure that you practice emergency procedures, good practical advice for anybody that goes to sea.
What's happening specifically with the families of those people involved right now? Are you in contact with them? Is there a staging area for them? What's happening?
So at this point, I'm not going to discuss any information about the families and communications with the families, and so we'll provide that with.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. As some of the questions are being asked a second time and they're just not going to get the information, let's review what we do know. This is a charter experience. This is an excursion put on by a company called Ocean Gate, and they operate out of St. John's, Newfoundland. This is straight from their website. You don't travel from St. John on the submarine. That is a very lengthy, hours-long trip. You ride if you're one of these tourists, and again, their website says these trips range about $250,000 for one person. because you were on a ship for 7 days. You get to the area, and that's when you load into this submersible and you go down to the wreckage site. Now, I've seen stories, CBS Sunday Morning has done stories on this specific company and this submarine. It is not guaranteed when you buy this ticket for 7 days that when you get out there, the conditions are going to be okay enough for you to get in that submarine and go down to the wreckage site. In fact, the story I watched, there were people who had been on this experience 2 or 3 or 4 times that had never been able to go down because the conditions just were not right. And so that's the kind of danger, that's the kind of game you are playing with when you go down to this level. Now, you heard the admiral there with the Coast Guard say to the question, is there, are you in it? That submarine is designed so amazingly because it has to be able to handle the pressure of 13,000 feet. And he was asked, does the Coast Guard have anything headed to that area that can go down to 13,000 feet? And he didn't give really a definitive answer. He just said we have a number of crews on the way, that they're using the planes by air to look, perhaps the submarine was able to surface and they've just lost contact, and maybe they're floating off somewhere. And then they're using the sonar to try and look that deep. Now, the good news is that the sonar would be able to pick up an anomaly on the floor of the ocean, whether it's the Titanic or whether it would be that submersible. The admiral made it sound like they would be able to detect where that submarine is. Now it becomes a race against the clock. The call came in yesterday afternoon that they lost contact, and you heard the admiral say they have some 96 hours that they could be, or 90 hours that they can sustain themselves in an emergency situation. So he wasn't sure if that meant from the minute that they start to have a problem, or if 96 hours is from the second they go under the water. He said so they could have anywhere from 96 hours to 70 hours at this point. Again, that'll probably get clarified. This could be the kind of search that goes on 2 or 3 days. Think about being on that submarine if it is in fact somehow lost power, and now they have 96 hours of reserve power, enough air for 96 hours, but maybe the reason they're disabled and they're not able to call back up to the surface is that they have lost the power that generates for them to go up and down. Think about sitting on the bottom of the ocean knowing that the clock is ticking and you are in that small submersible with about 5 other people wondering just what the heck is going to happen and if help is on the way. If they can't call up, and clearly they can't, they've lost radio communication, they have no idea if help is on the way. There's obviously protocols, they would assume it's on the way, but as a tourist who just paid $250,000, your mind has to be and your heart has to be racing, sitting at the bottom. Again, as you heard the admiral say, the thoughts are with those aboard, whether they are crew or tourists in this situation. We're going to keep up to date on this. This is clearly not the last time we're going to be hearing details as this search continues, again, off the coast of the east. More specifically, you've got the Boston Coast Guard involved here. Of course, we're going to have updates throughout our newscasts that are ongoing, the 3.5 hours of news that's on Channel 19 right now. If we have anything else that breaks, we'll bring it to you here on our digital properties. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now.